Awesome. I see folks coming in, so we're just going to give you a couple of more seconds for everybody to enter. We do suggest that we all want to be interactive, so if you'd like to turn on your cameras, we would really love to see the audience. All right, we're just going to wait a couple of more minutes. Well, not minutes, probably 1 minute. But we're glad you all are here tonight. All righty. All right. Well, it looks like most folks are in and settled. People may be joining us as we speak, but we're so glad you're here tonight for the Center of the Business of Health, Healthcare Career Networks Fireside Chat tonight with Lynn Lewis. Again, our Center for the Business of Health, Healthcare Career Networks is online for you all to access. I'll put that link in just, as we get started so we can make sure everybody's here. But again, remember, we advertise, we have a lot of fireside chats, panels, we have materials that can help you explore careers. And also we have some connections available if you want to get in there and to just kind of see people out in the world, just like Lynn and some of our wonderful alumni and our other industry partners. So tonight, again, thank you for coming on in, and I am going to hand it to Lynn, and I'm just going to ask her to tell us a little bit about herself to get this conversation started tonight. So welcome, Lynn.
Thanks, Suzanne, and great to see all of you, meet with all of you this evening. Tell you a little bit about myself. From a work perspective, I've been in the pharmaceutical industry for 30 plus years. I started on the actual pharmaceutical side, working for Eli Lilly and Company in Indianapolis. I then went to the CRO side of the industry, or contract research organization. And I've worked at 3 different CROs over the last 15 plus years. So Covance, and then Envigo, and now I'm with a company called Emmes that does clinical trial work for the pharmaceutical industry. I've primarily been on the commercial side of those companies, so sales and marketing, strategic planning, market research, but increasingly over the last 15 years or so, I've been in more executive roles. Find that I'm able to make bigger impact in my career as I've gone along. On the more personal side, I'm married, no children. My husband and I love to travel. I've been to 6 of the 7 continents of the world, and someday I hope to get to Antarctica as well. So we love to learn about different cultures, different peoples, world history. And then I also love anything having to do with the arts. So theater, music, I live in the DC area, although I spent quite a bit of my professional career in Indiana, in Indianapolis. But I've always said that I would love to get more involved with the Kennedy Center or the Lincoln Center in New York. So that's how much I love the arts. And then church is also very, very important to me on the personal side. So that's a little bit about me.
Terrific. And I want to let the crowd know that you can ask questions at any time by raising your hand, unmuting, just asking a question. But Lynn, it sounds like you've had a very diverse background, an interesting, career life and personal life. Again, I'm really impressed with your travels. But my next question kind of goes around the fact that you stated that the last 15 years you've been more of like an executive capacity. Can you tell us what steps you took to kind of land in the career area in which you are right now?
Yeah. I'm happy to. I think with most careers, it's been a bit circuitous. I certainly didn't start out knowing where I would end up. So I actually I have an undergraduate degree in biology and then a master's in business from Keenan Flagler. And as an undergraduate biology major, I thought I wanted to go into marine biology. I wanted to go live on a research boat somewhere or live on a Caribbean island and study marine life. But what I found, I did a year of research as an undergraduate, and I quickly found that working in a lab and working with organisms was not my idea of fun. I'm much more interactive with people. And so I thought that I would then go into higher education, either being a dean somewhere, maybe a faculty member. So I went to work for a small college in Western Pennsylvania, Allegheny College, in college admissions. So kind of going up that education administration route. And after being there for a couple of years, I thought, well, I'd like to get a master's degree, and I'm not exactly sure in what. So I looked at a master's or a PhD in education, in business, in management of some kind, and ultimately found my way to North Carolina and to Keenan-Flagler. So got my MBA there. And at first, I thought it was going to be an MBA with a concentration in nonprofits. As I say, I loved the arts, loved education, thought I might stay in that nonprofit world. And it's kind of funny because where I landed after business school was in one of the most lucrative industries in the world. And so I've gone from nonprofit to fairly big profit on the pharmaceutical side. So just kind of funny how things work out. But when I joined Lilly, they had a great program, and Lilly recruited straight out of Keenan-Flagler. And I looked at consulting positions, I looked at banking positions, and I looked at a couple of pharmaceutical companies and wound up going to Lilly. I really liked their culture. And that's a theme through my whole career, is culture, and the people that I work with are really, really important to me. Not just a job, it's where you spend a lot of time. And so Lilly had a fabulous management training program, and they didn't really call it that, but they had a rotation for their upcoming leaders, that you went through 2 or 3 different rotations of jobs on kind of the entry level, on the associate level. And then you moved up to manager, and you did the same thing. They did a sales position, a marketing, product marketing position, and a market research position. And you almost had to prove that you were good in all 3 of those areas before then being promoted up to the next level. So I did 11 jobs in 16 years. And I kind of kid around saying they couldn't find one that I could do. So they kept moving me around, but really it was part of their plan. I was fortunate enough to live in Europe for 2 years as a country manager in Denmark. So international business was really intriguing to me. And so I got that opportunity. My last job at Lilly was as a product team leader. So I was working in the osteoporosis area, and I had both the scientists and the commercial people reporting into me on a global product team. It was almost like a capstone experience within Lilly. And we went so far as we finished all the clinical trials, we submitted all the information to the FDA and to the European agency. We got the drug approved. We did all of the branding for the global launch. And after I did all that, I kind of wanted something different. And so that's when I moved over to the CRO side of the business and was able to get a vice president position on the CRO side and continue my career and developing into an executive through that move. Long-winded answer, sorry.
No, but perfect. And so at this point, I'm going to put it to the audience. Are there any questions as of yet? Any questions? Because again, I'm fascinated. And for anybody new to the arena, So the CROs are contract research organizations. And so this is a little bit of a turn, although all in kind of like the drug area. So can you tell us what basic skills, abilities, and experiences that you feel that you use most now as you're kind of at this point in your career? But then what did you find, like straight out of your MBA? What were those skills that were most important at that point in time as well?
Yeah. I would say early on in my career, it was skills that I had learned in sales, marketing classes, strategy, finance. It was spreadsheets. I was in a strategic department for my first 9 months or so after I went to Lilly. We were doing all kinds of analysis. It felt like I was still back in business school. So I was heavy into doing spreadsheets and finance work there. But a lot of the things that you are taught in business school, I would say as you get higher within an organization and as you get more seasoned in your career, you turn more to your softer skills. You're managing people, you're managing process, at least if that's where you want to go, and that's where my career led. So it's the communication skills, it's the visioning and strategy setting, it's interpersonal skills, motivational skills, negotiation. It's still sales, because everything you do, whether it's trying to get an extra person on your staff or whether you're trying to get more money for your budget, everything in business is about sales and selling your ideas. So yeah, I'd say, as I say, early on in my career, it was probably more of the skills that I had learned in business school. And now it's more of those softer skills, leadership skills, now that I'm leading larger organizations.
Terrific. And how would you say most people and yourself gain those skills? Is it do you have good mentors? Do you model after good people? Are there trainings that students can take advantage of now and as they move through a company to increase, their proficiencies there?
Yeah, I think some of it depends on the size of the company. Again, Lilly was large enough. It was probably 20,000 when I was there. It's now probably 40 or 50,000 people, but it's large enough that they've got those kinds of training programs for up and coming management. If you go into smaller organizations, oftentimes you don't have that ability to take training classes through your company. You may have to find something external and ask, will they reimburse you for taking that? You could take another class at a university or, just through another company. And that's where mentors really do become important. As you figure out, or maybe you're given feedback on a performance review that you're missing a certain skill, asking your boss, can you give me the name of somebody that you think is really good at doing that? And do you think they would mentor me? And then set up a pretty robust mentoring plan. Don't just meet a couple times and say that was a mentoring experience, but really say, this is what I'd like to accomplish through a mentoring program. Can you help me get there? And maybe take some examples of what you're working on or what you'd like to work on as examples for mentoring classes or mentoring discussions. But yeah, I think communication and interpersonal skills came pretty naturally to me, but they don't to everybody. And so whether it is through classes or mentoring and or going to a big company first to get some of that training in how they like you to manage people, how to coach people. And then what I've done is I've gone from large companies, and then every subsequent move I've made is been to a slightly smaller company, and I take a lot of those skills with me.
That's fantastic advice. Again, I'd like to put out to the crowd, we've got a nice robust group of folks. Are there any questions at this point in time? Again, pharmaceutical CROs, Lynn's experience in her MBA program and or others? We'd like to have oh, here's Alan. Alan.
Hi everybody.
Hi.
Thanks for your time. Hi, Suzanne. Very excited to hear from you, Lynn, because I'm fascinated by Lilly as a company, and I'm curious, based on your perspective and long tenure with the company, what does Lilly tend to look for in their MBA candidates for career opportunities, either scientifically or commercially?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that I have to go way back to both either when I got recruited or when I was doing some of the recruiting. And you've got somebody on campus, Marcus Saba, who is a little bit more recent than I am at Lilly, and maybe really good. He may still be very connected to some people that still work there. But I think they were definitely looking for leadership. And so, one of the things I did while I was at Keenan Flagler was I was one of the vice presidents of our student body or student group, the government. I don't know that you still have those anymore, but, I took on a leadership role in addition to all of our courses. I led a workshop or interscholastic program on campus where we brought schools, other MBA programs onto the campus. So those kinds of leadership experiences where you've had to influence peers or organize, show your organizational skills, those were certainly things that helped me as I was interviewing for Lilly. And it's also what I look for even today as I interview for the company I now work for, Emmes. So, it's the ability to answer questions on your feet, be quick to answer questions, to answer them thoroughly, but also succinctly, which I'm probably not modeling tonight, but also talking about, the classes that you've taken and the what you've learned from your master's program.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful. I just have a follow-up question too.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm coming from a laboratory background and a little bit of consulting experience in pharmaceuticals. And I'm trying to get into like portfolio strategy and commercial strategic planning. Are there some key skills you'd recommend someone with a scientific background to focus on in a business program?
Yeah. As I mentioned, I was a biology undergraduate. The only business or near business courses that I had taken as an undergraduate were micro and macroeconomics. I didn't know a spreadsheet, an income statement, anything from a financial perspective when I went to Keenan Flagler.
Yep, same here.
So, definitely all of the intro classes were really helpful for me. But then I did take a couple of finance courses my second year of business school, just so that I would have, and math came easy to me. And I would think as an engineer, it might come fairly easy to you. So it's more the terms and understanding of how the application of math is used that could help you. And looking at portfolio management of stocks, I think could translate into portfolio management of molecules.
Sure.
As I mentioned, I went into strategic planning straight out of business school, and all of my courses were really helpful, but certainly finance was one that I used straight out of the gate with them.
Awesome. Yep. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Terrific. And I hope I'm not going to call Stephen out, but Stephen Frost is on here and he will be spending the summer with Eli Lilly as well. So if you have Alan want to connect with Stephen over there, he may have like right in the moment information about what Eli Lilly was looking for, especially this year. So just want to make that connection. But Lynn, you already touched on a little bit of my next question, was to kind of really drill down to your MBA. But before I ask that, I see Paul has a question, and I'd much rather hear from the audience. So Paul, ask away.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. My question is, can you say a little bit about what's different between CROs and traditional pharma in terms of like what motivates the companies, the type of work that business people might do, et cetera? Maybe that's unfair, but to the extent that you can generalize.
Yeah. When you're in the pharmaceutical industry, oftentimes you're working on one or two drugs or therapeutic areas. So when I was at Lilly, I really got to know depression, or the whole CNS area, antibiotics, and then osteoporosis. So those were three areas that through my 16 years with Lilly, I learned really well. And I learned everything from early discovery work, so in the laboratory, all the way through animal studies that are required by the government, into human clinical trials, and then on to marketing that product. So you kind of follow products through their life cycle, but that life cycle can be 15 years, 12 to 15 years. In fact, the one drug that I worked on called Evista was an osteoporosis drug. It was 19 years old by the time we got it to market. And some of it, again, it's kind of a serendipity. Science is not a straight line. They started looking at that drug, raloxifene, for oncology, very much like tamoxifen is used today. And so they were looking at raloxifene for breast cancer. And either they decided it wasn't as good, it didn't show as much efficacy in rats before they got it into humans, or they decided to put their money somewhere else in their portfolio. But it went on the shelf in their laboratory for many, many years, until someone came to Lilly who had worked in the osteoporosis area. He looked around at the various assets that were in the laboratory, and he pulled raloxifene off the shelf and said, this is a good compound for osteoporosis, and took it on, and it became a blockbuster for them. So again, oftentimes you are therapeutic area focused and or product focused. What I love about the CRO industry, and so let me step back. On the pharma side, sometimes it's a very slow moving process, because it does take so long to do clinical trials, to get approvals, to launch products. On the CRO side, you are working with hundreds of different companies on lots of different molecules, on lots of different therapeutic areas. And so the variety is huge on the CRO. And I find it to be a much faster pace, because you are working with so many different clients. It's not to say I didn't love the time I was at Lilly and the education in drug development that I got there, but I also love the fast pace of the CRO and the ability to make an impact on the organization, but also on patient lives that we've got in the CRO industry. CROs are more specialized than the larger pharmaceutical companies. So I've worked for either parts of CROs or whole CROs that just focus in on laboratory science. So if you're involved in a clinical trial, you go to your doctor, you have a physical, you get blood drawn, you get, might get a biopsy if you're in a particular trial. Those lab samples all go to what are called central labs, central laboratories that do the analysis so that it is similar across the entire subject population of a clinical trial. So Covance was the first CRO I worked for. And for 8 years, I headed up the sales and marketing for their central laboratory, and really grew that business. Then I moved over to their early development part of their company, which was all of the preclinical work or the animal testing that needs to happen. Then I moved into discovery and translational services, so genomics, and learned all about that. And then finally, I moved into their clinical space, and sold to large pharma, but also biotech companies for just the clinical trial aspect, the running of the clinical trials. I'm now at a company, Emmes, that just does the clinical trial, that last piece that I had worked at for Covant. So clinical trials, running clinical trials, we're really heavy into the data management, statistics of running trials, monitoring sites, enrolling patients into trials. So the mechanics of running clinical trials is what we get really good at. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Terrific. And these questions are fantastic. So keep them coming. If you have them, or if you want to, piggyback off of a question that somebody asked prior, please feel free to raise your hands and get involved. Sonia.
I have a quick follow-up question to that. Is there an area you felt you enjoyed the most out of all of these? Like, what was your favorite role?
Ooh, that's hard. It's kind of like asking where my favorite country is in the world, because I've really enjoyed all of them. They've all taught me something. My favorite.
Or a few, I don't know.
Yeah. I was going to say one of my favorites was certainly being a country manager in Denmark. I had about 50 people that I was responsible for. And just like drugs have life cycles, where you launch them, you grow them, you might bring out a second or third indication for a drug, but then eventually they'll go off patent. And so you have to have a post-patent strategy for those drugs. So just like drugs have a development cycle or a life cycle, what we were finding was our affiliates were having that same kind of cycle. And when I was in Denmark, 70% of their sales were in 2 products, both of which were coming off patent. And if we didn't do something quickly, like bring more products to market, we were going to have to shrink the size of that affiliate. Instead of 50 people, we probably would have had to go down to about 30 people. And so we were fortunate that we were able to launch. Lilly's pipeline was pretty big at that time. And so far, that affiliate had not launched all of the products that Lilly had in their pipeline. So we launched 6 products in 1 year and really diversified the portfolio of that affiliate, which allowed it to not only stabilize, but also keep growing into the future and not be so impacted by the drugs that were coming off patent. So that was really exciting. One, living in a foreign country, learning a little bit of Danish, leading all of the functions of a company. It was like having my own little company. It was about $15 million in revenue. And it was kind of my first entrepreneurial experience of they gave me this little company to run for a couple of years. So that was definitely fun. But also then leading a really large product team. And as I mentioned, the drug that I led the product team for at Lilly was Forteo, again, an osteoporosis drug. And the fact that I had both the science and the business, which was my undergraduate, my graduate work coming together in a culmination, and getting the approval through both the US and the European Union for that drug. And ever since I left Lilly, I keep looking in their annual report, and it made it up to well over $1 billion in annual sales. So very rewarding. Hard work, but very rewarding. And then since then, I love every job that I've done for different reasons. So my last job before this one, the company, while it was based in New Jersey, most of its employees were in the UK. So I got to travel a lot over to the UK about every other month. And many of my roles have been global in nature. So I've managed people all around the world. And I find that fascinating and very challenging and rewarding all at the same time. So I'll pause at that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right.
I did raise a quick question, like, are pharma companies typically as global as CROs tend to be? I work at a CRO right now. So
It depends really on the size of the company. I would say the top 20 to 30 pharma companies are definitely global. They are everywhere. And the same holds true for the largest CROs. You know, probably the largest 5 to 7 CROs are fully global. If you get much smaller than that, then you become more regional usually. Emmes, while we are global, it is really through acquisitions that we've made in the last year. So when I joined them 2 years ago, they were just US based. They had a few staff in India and a few staff in Canada, but primarily they were US based. But through a number of acquisitions, we have gone global, and we're now trying to teach our leaders how to think globally and how to manage globally.
Great. Yeah, thank you.
Again, terrific questions. I think Anna has one.
Yes, hi, nice to meet you. I was wondering about what you just said. What are good skills to connect internationally and to lead a team of international people with different backgrounds?
Yeah. First of all, I think you need to learn some of their cultures and the way they operate. Always be thinking about them first as opposed to you. So for example, on conference calls, if you're doing one-on-ones, I've had people that report it to me in Japan or in China or in India, and their time zones are so different from ours. And so often you find that Americans want everybody else to work on our schedules as opposed to thinking about the other people and the fact that they would have to work at night if you wanted to have a conversation with them during the day. So it's sharing that responsibility. So sometimes we would meet early morning my time, late theirs, and vice versa. You know, I would put in the extra mile of meeting with them on their time zones so that we weren't always having to do it, them accommodating me. You know, learning about cultures, even little things such as holidays, asking about, you know, what are they doing for, you know, an important holiday in their area. Just showing that you care and really listening and learning how to bring different cultures out, because, you know, sometimes we can bowl over people. You know, we're fairly direct, and we'll just speak out whatever we think. And as a leader, it's really important to hear the voices and the thoughts and ideas of everybody on your team. And so how do you pull somebody out that might be hesitant to speak up in a meeting? Is it that you have smaller meetings, allowing them the comfort, or just saying, I'm going to call on you from time to time because I need to hear from you? So those are a couple of tips that I would say have helped me.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And just a little one, if I may. So about this, you're saying what do you think are the biggest reward? How the companies that are growing internationally can, what are good things? I mean, this is I'm thinking. I'm from Latin America, so I'm thinking, well, maybe this is something that I can take advantage of, because I can provide a company with a different perspective and a different knowledge about the country they are trying to work with. So our CROs trying to get more diverse and to facilitate this task?
Yes, I would say both CROs and the pharmaceutical companies are, some of them are already based in Latin America. Some are thinking, how do I get into Latin America or South America? And so, yes, I think your vantage point, your understanding of that region would be very important to them. I don't know if you're planning on going back there after school, or if you want to stay in the States and impart that information. But definitely all of the companies that I've worked for are always looking for diverse thoughts, diverse people to work on projects, because that's how you get the best result on hard, challenging problems.
I have a quick question. Thank you so much for all you've shared so far. I have a question just in thinking about like careers and transitions that you've made. So obviously you were at Covance for a long period of time before you ended up making your transition to Envigo, and then before ending up at Emmes. So I'm just curious in terms of when you made that transition, that first transition, was it that you were sort of looking for something different, or did just an opportunity you couldn't pass up come along? Like kind of what prompted you to sort of leave a long career to try something else and then to go to Emmes?
Yeah, one thing that you'll find as you get more and more senior in a career, your boss is really, really important, but so are your investors and your board of directors. As I mentioned earlier, culture and people, the people that I work with, the colleagues that I work with are really important to me. And as I interview with companies, I try and probe to see, how does this company operate? What is their norm? And for me, it kind of goes all the way back to Keenan Flagler. I loved the teamwork and the emphasis on team that we did at Keenan Flagler. And so every company I've worked for is very, very team-oriented, very collaborative. I didn't want anything that was cutthroat or just focused on an individual and solo performance. Because again, I'm all about getting that input from diverse groups, diverse teams to solve problems. So now I've lost my train of thought. Culture and why I left different companies. So when I was at Covance, they got a new CEO, and I was reporting directly into the CEO, and he brought in his own new team, which many CEOs do. So as I kept watching him bring in more and more people, both on the commercial side, but just in general, finally one day I just said to him, I think you need my position and the salary that you're paying me to pay for these new executive VPs or VPs that you're bringing in that you've worked with in the past. And so we kind of mutually agreed that I would go on and do something different, and that he would bring in his own staff. So that was kind of a conscious decision based on who had come in to lead that organization. At Envigo, it was because we were sold. And ironically, Envigo was sold back to Covance, or it was sold to Covance. And so I wasn't going to go back to Covance. So I got a severance package as we were sold. And then coming to Emmes, it was the neat thing about the job here is that I was the first commercial person that they had ever hired. They had been in existence for 40 years and had never had a sales, marketing, communications person on their staff. They had primarily been selling into the government, and I kind of liken it was more like a consulting firm, with consultants and accounting firms, lawyers. It's really your partners that are doing the selling and trying to go out and get new business. That was Emmes before I joined and before we decided, or Emmes decided to go with a more traditional sales and marketing organization. So when I came on board, it was a white paper. There was nothing here. I had to hire Salesforce. I had to put in a customer relationship management tool. We got a marketing staff, a communications person. And so over the last 2.5 years, I've now built an organization of about 20 people from nothing. And that was kind of the excitement or the lure of this position, plus growing a company from a US focus into an international CRO.
Very cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so politics start to play a role. And again, who you report to is really important. Oftentimes they say that people leave a manager, they don't leave a company. And so making sure that who you report to, and you won't report to the same person all along. As I mentioned at Lilly, I had 11 different jobs, so I had lots of different managers. But it's really important who you work for. And if you are able in your career to say, I would like to go to do that next within the same company, again, look at who you're working for or you're working with, because you spend a lot of time with them. And I made a number of decisions through my years at Lilly, as well as at Covance, on who I would be working for as much as the content of the work that I'd be doing.
Terrific. And Lynn, thank you so much for bringing that up, because I think even in like internship searches and the full-time job, those are the questions you're interviewing the companies too. And I think sometimes name brand, goes a long way, but students need to really ask those deep questions about who will I be reporting to? What types of projects will I be doing? Where are the next steps? So thank you so much for bringing that up. I see that Alan's got another question.
Yeah, thank you. Lynn, with your experience at Emmes and a lot of CRO experience, I'm curious if you have any insight into decentralized clinical trials. I've been reading a lot of articles about how tech and AI are kind of helping us run more efficient clinical trials, recruit better patient populations, et cetera. Curious if you have any thoughts there.
Yeah, Alan, I think the pandemic has really helped push decentralized trials a lot. Again, the pharmaceutical industry is pretty change resistant. And part of that is because everything is regulated. And so the FDA is slow to change, slow to come out with new guidances, new things that are acceptable as they're approving drugs. And so that makes the pharmaceutical industry by nature very change averse. But the pandemic pushed them or pushed us into a different direction. Very quickly, clinical trials either stopped, or they stopped enrolling, or they stopped visits because everything was focused on the pandemic. And we found ways around it. We started doing monitoring of sites remotely. Pharmaceutical clients started to do their audits of their vendors remotely. We started doing more patient visits remotely. And I think some of those things will definitely stay after the pandemic, after things go back to a more normal. Now, some of them might not, but I think there's been a lot of innovation for the clinical trial industry through this pandemic. And I think companies really like a lot of it. And so I think a lot of that will stay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Terrific. And again, these are fantastic questions that you all are having, but I do have one now that I've listened to Lynn speak a bit. You've had a lot of opportunities, you've taken advantage of a lot of opportunities, but are there some skills or are there some experiences that you wish you would have taken advantage of earlier, or that you feel that you may have missed out on for one reason or another?
I don't know that there are, Suzanne. I'll probably kick myself, and after we hang up, I'll go, oh, I should have talked about that. I mean, I think a lot of business schools today are taking either semesters or terms or time abroad. And so if that had been offered when I was in graduate school, I would have enjoyed that because I kind of focused in on marketing and international business. So my first international role, trying to think, it may have been Denmark. So I was probably about 10 years into my career by the time I got to do that. But then every other job since then has been a global role. So perhaps if something like that had been offered, that would have been something I would have been very interested in.
Terrific. So I do know now in the MBA, and I'm not sure when you were in the program, they have the global immersions, which are, a couple of weeks in different areas. I have had recent students who have taken a little bit longer. Do you feel that those would be very helpful in just kind of exploring some of that international feel?
Yes, very definitely.
Terrific. And so I think you also mentioned already some things that are really, it sounds like wherever you are at whatever time, you make it exciting and you're excited about it. But right now, just in that, like the healthcare ecosystem or where you are right now, what is really exciting you about healthcare moving forward today and in the next, let's just say, decade?
Yeah. I think the research that is going on today just excites me tremendously. We do some focus on rare diseases within Emmes. We also do a lot in the vaccine and infectious disease area. So we were right at the heart of all of the studies that were going on with COVID over the last 2 years, which has been really exciting to kind of be on the cutting edge of science. But with all of the genomics work that's going on, the sequencing of the human genome, but also looking for what's causing a number of these rare diseases, and especially rare diseases in children, I think that's really exciting work that's going on. And it's not only because of the genome, but it's also the way some of the clinical trials are set up. And usually you have to use a placebo or a sugar pill, or a standard of care. And we're now finding ways through statistics and through genomics to find that a patient may be able to be their own placebo or their own comparator group, or you may be able to take cohorts of patients and look at them over time, and they may become your standard of care or your comparator. So I think that whole area of rare diseases or diseases that haven't been cured in the past is what continues to make me excited about the healthcare industry.
That's really fascinating and wonderful to hear. So again, I'm going to put it out to the audience. We have about 12 minutes left, and this is a great time to ask some more questions. Got to have some gnawing at you in there. Okay, Courtney?
Hi, I've really enjoyed this conversation, giving me a lot of good information. I was wondering, I know you kind of wanted to end on a high note, but are there any challenges that you see specifically in the clinical research field? Maybe things that COVID has affected with shortages in the medical field, anything pertaining to that?
Yeah, I think one of the big challenges, and it's hitting lots of industries, not just healthcare and not just drug development, but there is truly a war for talent right now. So I think you all will be coming out of your classes at a great time because we can't get enough of you. I think a number of people have chosen to leave the workforce through the pandemic. They may be going and doing something entrepreneurial. They may be traveling, they may retire early, but and the baby boom is, many of them are nearing retirement. So there's just a real shortage in all aspects of drug development for talent and for people. Other challenges and shortages. We don't see too many others in the CRO industry. I'm sure the pharmaceutical industry and healthcare, like hospitals and doctors' offices are still seeing shortages. But again, I think something that we deal with day in and day out is we can't get enough people fast enough to grow our company.
Great, thanks. That is a positive spin too.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great problem to have, students. Terrific. And again, still open for questions. All right.
Maybe just a follow-up, Courtney, on your question. Lynn, when you talk about a shortage of personnel, do you mean like field sales personnel or like internal operations and marketing people?
All of the above, Alan. And it's for us I was going to say for us, it's mostly on the operations side because that's the largest part of our workforce. But we've even had trouble getting salespeople. I mean, you'll interview somebody and before you can make them an offer, they have had several other offers and they're off doing something else. So you've got to move really quick in your interviewing process. You've got to sell while you're interviewing to make sure you're keeping people interested. You can't hold back and be slow about this market right now.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Suzanne, one thing that you had said reminded me in terms of career paths, a piece of advice that I like to give is always be thinking several jobs ahead. So while I had no idea where I would end up, sometimes it would be easier for me to think, not just of the next role, but of several roles ahead and looking for mentors or people above you in an organization that you go, I'd like their job. I like them, but I'd also like their job. It's interesting. And so how do I get there? And just remember that there are always multiple ways to get to a particular position. And you want to be well-rounded. The thing that I love about my education from Keenan Flagler is that I was so well-rounded. I learned, when I was there, everybody took the exact same first year. If you were an accountant, you still took accounting classes. If you came in from marketing, you still took marketing classes. I don't know that they're that strict anymore, but the thing that did was give you that well-roundedness in your first year. And you learned something about organizational behavior, even if you didn't want to. Or you learn something about finance, even if you didn't think you were good at it. And the best compliment that I've gotten, and it's actually come from several bosses, is that they love the fact that I look at problems so broadly. And I think it goes back to Keenan Flagler. And I just loved every course that I took there and tried to be as broad as I could be to learn everything in 2 short years of business. And I've tried to look for roles and jobs that would allow me to keep every aspect of that MBA fresh. And every job doesn't do that. But as I say, I think it's the highest compliment that anyone can ever give you to say, you're not a salesperson or you're not a finance person. You're a business person because you look at things from so many angles. So I'd encourage you to stay broad. And look at things from many, many different ways, but also be thinking about your jobs, not only the next one that you want to aspire to, but what's 1-2 years down the road or 2 jobs down the road, and look at the many paths that you could take to get there.
Yet again, sage advice on so many levels. Yeah, a lot of times students will come in and say, what exactly do I have to do to get here? And I'm like, well, I can give you 3 to 20 different pathways. And so that's where I feel that, as you mentioned already, the relationship building, the mentorship, and finding those people that are going to give you good advice that are going to help you along the way are so important. And it's scary at first, I'm sure, to kind of open yourself up to these relationships. But I feel that that has been such a strength of yours and has really led to your kind of satisfaction and happiness in your career. So thank you so much for sharing these wise nuggets of wisdom. And I'm going to ask you for one more, because I think a lot of students often are interested to know what do you read? Like, what are some of your favorite books, online publications? They can be, professional, personal. What do you rely on to keep up to date, or, to keep motivated in your field?
Yep. A couple of things. I'll give you, in the pharmaceutical industry, there are a couple of newsletters that I subscribe to. One is Endpoints News, and it's a free daily subscription that allows me to keep on top of what's happening almost daily. And then the other one is Fierce Pharma. And both of those are really good pharmaceutical industry daily publications. So then from more of a management perspective, I've got a couple of books. They're relatively old now that I've found have been helpful for me. And two of them are very short reads, like an hour, but they're so sage in what they give. So one is called The 1 Minute Manager. And it talks about how do you manage people, each person differently. So don't have one management style, but adapt to the people that you're going to be managing and really work with them as individuals. The next one is Who Moved My Cheese? Again, kind of a lighthearted, but a book on change and change management and being open to change, and how many people in organizations find change difficult. So that one's a fun read as well. And then a little bit more in-depth and serious, and again, a little bit older, but I really like the concepts of this book, and it's called Good to Great. And some of the companies that are talked about in there may not be so great anymore, because companies kind of go through their own life cycle, but it's a highly structured analysis of companies and what it took to make them not just good companies, but great companies. And I think the advice and the principles that are talked about in that book are timeless. So I would encourage you to read those. And then for fun, I'm a history buff, and I like Eric Larson as an author. He wrote The Devil in the White City, Isaac's Storm, and he does a lot of research. They're almost nonfiction. In fact, I think some of his books have become nonfiction. He does so much writing. He just did one not so long ago, the first year of Churchill's prime ministership, if that's such a word. And that one was interesting. He's done a book on the sinking of the Lusitania. And he always puts science and business together. Maybe that's why I like him, because of my background. But anyway, just a fun author. Sometimes it's kind of heavy, but an author that I really like and have found. And Dan Brown is another one that I read most of his stuff too.
The Splendid and the Vile is the Churchill book. I'm
yes,
a third of the way through it.
It's excellent.
Well, again, wonderful suggestions, and definitely the Fierce Pharma, the Fierce Anything that you're interested in. There's a whole logbook full of those. And I have a couple of, I didn't know they were old school, but I have them right there in my book, Who Moved My Cheese? Oh my goodness. Again, sage advice. But I feel that you've just brought, just as you said, the biggest compliment to you was the way you think broadly. And I feel that you've brought that here to this discussion, because I feel that it's what you do with the experiences that you have, no matter what they are. And I just appreciate you kind of being, hey, I left a company and that's okay. I just hope that, students can get that feeling of that's kind of like an opportunity for something else. So take a chance. And we just so much appreciate having you here tonight because it is 7 o'clock already. That went by so quickly. But I just can't thank you enough. And audience, I thank you all as well. You asked some wonderful questions. And again, we are here probably once or twice a month. So please look at the schedule because we will be back. But again, just thank you, Lynn, for taking the time. You are just like a pleasure to call an alum. So again, also anybody out there that has any questions, please feel free to email me. Erin Leach, I want to thank her so much. You don't see her on camera, but she gets everything together. She's our program manager, so thank her. And also, just Lynn is a part of our board. So there are so many folks that you can also see their careers on our Career Network site. But everybody have a wonderful evening and hopefully we'll see you here again. So again, Lynn, thank you so much.
Thank you. Been a pleasure.
Awesome.
Have a good evening.
Thanks,
Thanks.
everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.